Hey Stephanie, my name's Yoni, and this is a crazy thing that I do that I leave feedback for people in video form because I hate typing. I've been having a look at your shot. It's looking really, really, really nice. Sorry to hear that you had to do a lot of this stuff again to change to IK, but it's looking really good. The things that I love about the shot is the great amount of detail that you've got, especially in the hands. All the little gestures and everything of how the hands flow into one pose into another look really, really, really great. The idea as well for the fairy is really good. The things that kind of like most jump out to me is that I don't get a real sense that in some moments that she's actually floating and being pulled up by those wings to an extent. And the other thing that kind of like jumps out at me as well very close is that your framing for the shot is like really, really, really tight. You've got some frames, in frame 187 where she goes partly off screen, and also in frame 213 when she's getting ready to do the kick. I don't think the kick's got enough force as she hits the flower because she's so close to it. She only can get so far away from it before she gets out of screen. So it's like it feels like everything here is really contained, like she's not wanting to fall off the actual side of the frame like that. And I think that you could really make the scene much, much, much more powerful if you just had it a little bit wider open, or it could be a camera move as well. The camera could go up and down, left and right, but you'd lose that detail with keeping the flower that's closed up as a real center point for your composition. So I think that if you just step it back a little bit, it's going to feel much, much better and move that anticipation of the kick much more to the right. I think that that moment's pretty important because you really got to convey that force that goes into the kick. But looking at things kind of like almost frame by frame and a bit more, in detail, um, things that jump out at me is the pose of when she kind of like goes down into, that she's just about to tap onto the flower in frame 13. The hand that's going to touch the flower and the one that's going down on the knee, they're just kind of like moving roughly at the same time. I think here on frame 13 you could just start to dip down, the shoulders a little bit more as the weight goes a bit more onto the knee itself. So coming into frame 18, you could roll, the shoulders and the spine a little bit forward because I think your wings are kind of like just floating behind the second joint of the spine, starting from the top. And so the tapping on the flower looks great as she comes up. I really like that. I think here again, partly because of your composition, you could exaggerate this anticipation in frame 60 down a little bit further so that she drops down. And it's almost like about to take a dive to an extent. She does anticipate a little bit, but I think that it's mostly on the hips. If she actually dipped down a little bit so her legs get ready in frame 60 and that entire pose just dips down a little bit before she actually hovers off, I think that that might help you actually sell that idea that she's floating and flying around much, 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 much more clearer. Nice pose as she kind of like droops off there. I think you could have, because you kind of like have a bit of a wave there coming up into frame 72, but I think you could have the legs coil up a little bit sooner. So she kind of like coils her legs currently in frame 80. Maybe as she comes up over the top in frame 75, those legs could actually start. Let's see if I can do that. It's that way actually. Bending upwards very slightly like that. It doesn't have to be completely all the way up, 90 degrees. I'm talking to something a bit more subtle. So in frame 75, you could actually start having the body start to curve in. So when she comes into the pose in frame 83, she's much more kind of like already, it's favoring really the pose that you have in frame 83. So trying to get into that pose with the legs just a little sooner. And then as she comes down, I think the pose that you've got in frame 107, it's kind of like she's really, really, really crunched up towards the camera. The legs and the arms, they're all kind of like very much in the same space. I'd almost try and see if you could clear that up somehow, and that might be rotating the torso or moving things so that they're just ever so slightly out the way, and you can leave some negative space, especially between the feet and the arms. I don't think that you should intersect those things, but nice little details as well there, that there's a bit of a dip here in frame 120, and she could stretch her legs up a little bit as well. Always, I'm not sure, it's kind of like I'm missing a bit of almost some flowing motion to an extent that doesn't have to be on all the time through the shot, but especially as she moves, I think she needs a bit more of a graceful pattern to how she does things to an extent, and there should be lots of curves and S's in her entire poses. Um, no real comments kind of like on the opening on the flower. That looks really, really, really great. There is some twinning on the legs in frame 181. I'm not sure if you can do that in a different way, but it can survive there quite well. I also think that the anticipation that you've got, because you're running out of frames on frame 194, that anticipation when she builds up to actually go to do the kick is, I think that's a more important pose. I'd really try to get into that pose a bit more for like 4 more frames and try to steal them off somewhere at the beginning. Maybe I think she does like 2 taps on the flower when she starts open. She could maybe do either those taps faster or just not as slow as she actually did them, so it could be a quick little tap tap at the beginning, and you might be able to scavenge some frames from the beginning of your animation over there. And then when she comes down, again, it's that arc as she comes down, that S shape that she does across the screen is really nice, but it's so contained, because it's literally got to stop really, really, really soon. It's almost like you want it to come down, flow up really quickly. All the ideas are there, but I think that, just make sure that the frame's wider so she can move further to screen left, and that'll build up that action much better, much, 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 much better. So when she comes up here, ready to do the kick, I think that you need to look very closely at the line of action as she does the kick, because the kick's going to come from the hips. And one of the problems that you've got here is that she's building herself up in a pose in 213, so in frame 213, she's like, it's almost like she's looking like she's going to leave frame to an extent. You want to almost prepare for that kick much, much, much better, much closer to have kind of like already the hips ready. So you might want to lift up the knee that she's currently got bent even further up towards the left of screen, and also bend the other foot as well, so that we basically pay more attention to the foot that's actually going to do the kick, so the movement's broader on that leg than the other one. So really when she comes down into the pose in frame 218, you know, this pose here, look very clearly at the line of action. It's kind of like it's curving down and the foot just touches the flower for 1 frame. The first time I saw it, I just thought she'd kick the stem because she drops down later on. And I think that that's something that you should do. So the kick, if you want to show more force, make sure it's almost straight to an extent, and the movement of the kick has to start from the hips. So the hips have to be what throw the body to a side. It's almost like imagining that she's a pendulum now, and her hips are going to thrust out to one side and fly in that direction. So that movement has to be really, really, really straight and slashing, and there has to be a bit of impact there. So I'd say in the line of action, put her head slightly more towards the left of screen, get the body straighter, the arms as well, lift them up further, almost as if they're being dragged behind. So it's almost like as if she's going to do a push, she's bracing for that impact. And the foot, which is bent, it currently looks really, really, really relaxed to an extent. You've got the foot kind of like doing this S shape, so it kind of like goes down in an S from the leg to the knee down into the toes. And that just doesn't seem. I'd almost rotate the foot so it would be almost straight as well. So you'd have 2 feet almost coming in, except that one's bent and the other one's straight out, ready for the kick. So once she does the kick there, she drops down, as I said before, really, really, really fast. One of the things that should happen here is that, depending on the weight of the flower, the foot would bend a little bit back, because even though she's hit it and it's not really that heavy, she can continue kind of like how much follow through she has when she hits the flower conveys the weight, but the leg would always bend no matter, how heavy or how light it is. No matter if it's something light, even my fingers kind of like as they push against my palm, they bend ever so slightly. If it's something that's very heavy, there's a bigger bend there, but the leg will always tend to bend as it recovers from the hit that it actually has afterwards. So instead of going down so far, I think that if it's light, she wouldn't drop so quickly, but keep that arc on the hips kind of like flowing, because after the kick, that power of the hips would go down, so the legs would dangle after that as you've got, and then she pulls back up. Nice little turn at the end, and the thing that I like is the settle that she has at the end of it. That little bob that she's got there. That's really, 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 really nice. I mean, that helps convey that sense of floatiness much, 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 much more. And yeah, I mean, also fantastic animation on the flower as well. The rigging, the way that it sways, it's absolutely great. Yeah, but loads of good stuff. Hope you finish everything okay this week, and yeah, shoot up another public review and I'll send you a couple more comments. Take care. Bye.